All right, so for my friends watching at home, hope you guys are doing well. We hope to have you back soon. So we already went over this, but what we're doing right now is on page 41 through 44, we're going to quickly go over the answers to the homework assignment that was due. So hopefully, if you haven't done that assignment yet, because you've been waiting until the night before you were going to come back to school, don't watch this lecture yet. Do your homework and then be honest and come back through and make corrections. So for those of you out there in the room right now, we've already gone over some of these. I'm going to just move quickly. I want you to write down the right answers. I may make a few comments along the way. If you have a question, raise your hand. So for number 1A, it was brother and sister. We said male sibling, female sibling. Similarity, both are siblings. Difference, different genders. For B, I'm going to edit this answer because it's a little too wordy. Let's just say... There you go. That's the answer I want for B. A circle is a 2D figure. A sphere is a 3D figure. What do they have in common? They're both figures. They're both shapes. What's the difference? One is 2D, the other is 3D. So hopefully you're getting the hang of what we're doing here. Think about what they have in common. Think about what they have different, and that's how you define them. A circle, a 2D figure. A sphere, a 3D figure. Similarity, figures, difference. One is 2D, the other is 3D. All right, letter C. Newspaper. I'm going to change this one too. So what I realized as I was talking about some of you is like some of you have never had a newspaper subscription or a magazine subscription. And so like the idea of a newspaper or magazine is so foreign to you. And that's kind of why I didn't grade this one for accuracy because it wasn't really fair. But basically, newspapers come out daily or sometimes weekly. But most often, you have a daily newspaper. The New York Times comes out every single day. Vanna, you've already written this down? We're in our textbook on page 41. We're going over the correct answers, and you are writing them down on page 41. So newspapers come out every single day, or they should come out every single day. Magazines don't come out every day. They come out every week or every month. Now, what do they have in common? They're both periodicals. They're both publications. But the frequency with which they come out is different. So both are periodicals, and the difference is publication frequency and printing format. Traditionally, newspapers are written on very thin pieces of paper, and magazines are a little bit glossier, so they look different. Newspapers are folded. Magazines are printed and binded like a book. So there are similarities and there are differences. Newspaper, magazine, similarity, periodicals, difference, publication frequency. Yes?
Would you say like it would be fair to say that like a magazine has a specific like topic that it's talking about, whereas a newspaper is just like a bunch of news?
Yeah. So Ava's made a great point. Remember, there's lots of different ways to define things. And so she pointed out that traditionally magazines have a specific focus. What do you expect to find in Sports Illustrated? Sports. Whereas what do you expect to find in newspapers? All sorts of things. There is a sports section, but there's a fashion section. There's a news section. So yeah, I think that's a great point as well. All right, next was breakfast and dinner. And breakfast, traditionally anyway, is the first meal of the day. I don't want to hear about the time you sleep until 1 o'clock on Saturdays and have lunch when you wake up. For grown-ups, breakfast is the first meal of the day, and dinner is the main meal served later in the day. What do they have in common? They're both meals. Difference, they're served at different times. So we are defining these by what they have in common and by what they have different. First meal, main meal, both are meals served at different times. All right, next, E, blind and deaf. What do they have in common? They both have to do with a physical disability. Blind people are unable to see. Deaf people are unable to hear. What do they have in common? There's an inability to sense something. And the difference is different senses are impaired. Blind people unable to see. Deaf people unable to hear. Similarity, inability to sense. Difference, different senses are impaired. All right, I'm going to go on to the next one. F. Huge, very large, tiny, very small. So one similarity that you might notice is they deal with things that are unusually sized. So if you walk past a guy on the street who is 5'10", would you notice? No, that's average height. If you walk by someone who is 3'10", would you notice? If you walk by someone who is 7'10", would you notice? Yes. And so huge and tiny have to do with unusual size, but the difference is they're on opposite extremes, right? Huge is very large, tiny is very small. Huge, tiny. Now, what part of speech is huge and tiny, or are huge and tiny? They're adjectives. And so typically we'd want to define them with an adjective. So you notice we say large or small. We're using the same part of speech in our definitions. That will become important. To punch and to slap. Well, again, you notice we have verbs here and we're defining them with a verb. To punch is to hit with a closed fist, right? This is a punch. But to slap is to hit with an open fist or an open palm. So the similarity is they're both hitting with the hand. If I walk up and hit Curran with my foot, I didn't slap him or punch him, I kicked him. So they're hitting with the hand. The difference is whether or not the hand is open. Now, one of the things this exercise is aimed at doing, guys, is getting you to realize how much you can really notice if you'll slow down and think about things. To think about what makes a punch and a slap the same and what makes a punch and a slap different. This is the value of logic. We're slowing down and thinking about things. Next, H. So to walk, I'm going to just make this even. Well, I'm going to keep it the way. We'll leave it the way it is because I think it's an important distinction. So to walk and to run, they are, of course, both verbs. To walk is to move by foot with at least one foot always on the ground. All right, just think about that. When you're walking, you have one foot on the ground all the time. But when you're running, you are moment by moment, both feet are off the ground. Now, you might also differentiate by speed. So you might say to walk is to move slowly and to run is to move quickly. But again, what's the problem with the words slowly and quickly? They are what kind of words, Vandernoot?
They're adjectives.
Well, no. They are adverbs. That's not the problem with them, though, Ben. They're vague. Okay, what's quick for a sloth is slow for a cheetah, right? So that word doesn't necessarily have a meaning, but a definite meaning like to move with one foot always on the ground, that is walking no matter whether you're walking 1 mile an hour or 10 miles an hour. What do they have in common? Their movement using one's feet. The difference is the speed of motion and the placement of the feet. Yes?
Well, I feel like when I looked up the definition of to walk and to run, because I couldn't really describe it, because I didn't want to say, like you said, walking is faster. I feel like for to run, they said that it was just to walk faster with both feet on the ground, and I knew that was wrong.
I don't know what dictionary you looked that up in, but that dictionary was incorrect. Yeah. So the key here, guys, is process. So the first thing we do, okay, to walk, to run, okay, what do they have in common? Well, they're both describing movement. Okay, now what's different about them? And so you can, again, it wouldn't be necessarily wrong to go with speed definitions, but the problem is that's almost always going to be a vague word. And so if you think about what really makes them different is where your feet are when you're doing them. And I don't expect you guys, probably none of you got that right? Probably none of you said, oh, it's the placement of the feet. But that's kind of the point here. I don't expect you to know everything right now. I expect you to be learning the skill of slowing down and thinking carefully. All right, so we already did number 2. It was a precising definition. Number 3 is a persuasive definition. McKeever, you're writing this down in your book. So persuasive definition, if I remember correctly, they described a rabbit as being a fuzzy rat, right? So going back into my wife's family, her youngest sister really wanted a bunny rabbit, and her parents said no. So her older brothers bought her a rabbit for her birthday without telling her parents. If you asked my wife's mother what a rabbit is, she's probably going to go with fuzzy rat because she doesn't want it in her house. But if you asked my sister-in-law Hope, she'd probably give you a different definition. A stipulative definition, number 4. Notice it said, I think normal science means, and so they're giving you a new definition. Number 5 is a theoretical definition. It's defining the definition, I think, of physics, a theoretical definition from within the realm of physics. Okay, any questions so far? All right, we already did the first one. We said age. I'm going to go ahead and put all these. So here's you can stop writing now. You don't have to write all these down, but I want to just go over and just show you all the different things that we could have said. So check. Well, for my chess friends out there, Vandernoot, I hope you put something about chess. Ben, you put something about chess. All right, check is exposure of a king to attack, a sudden stoppage of forward progress, a written order to a bank to pay money, a mark placed beside an examine next to an item to examine. So all those are different definitions of the word check. How about class? Group of students in a given grade, a category, people at a given level of society, elegance, or style. All those are different definitions of class. Face, front of the head, vertical surface of a cliff, to orient in a particular direction, to confront, fair, according to justice, pleasing to look at, baseball hit between the foul lines, free of clouds, a place you go to get cotton candy, right? Fair. Fine. Satisfactory, not thick, financial penalty, head, upper part of the body, containing the face and the brain, person in charge, point of an arrow, foam on a drink, light, not heavy, visible electromagnetic waves, source of illumination to ignite a flame, and on and on and on. So if we'll actually learn the skill of slowing down and thinking about something, we'll see that all of these words can have a multiplicity of meanings, and how we define them, we usually learn from the context. So any questions about this first lesson, this first homework, about the purposes and types of definitions? Okay, take out a piece of paper. We're going to take a few notes, and then you're going to have a homework assignment. Yes. No. All right, lesson 2, for those of you who like to label things, lesson 2 is genus and species. Genus and species. It'll be up there on the top line as well. All right, so we are still in this class discussing definitions, and today our goal is to focus on a particular way of defining words and understanding the relationship between them. So we're going to learn about what it means to define by genus and species. So we oftentimes do this. You may not realize it, but you oftentimes define words by placing them inside a higher category or a genus. So here's your definition of genus. This will be on our catechism. This will be on your quiz. Genus, a term that is more general, broad, or abstract than the original term and includes it. Now, have you all at some point in science class talked about genus and species and kingdom and phylum and all that stuff?
Phylum, class, something.
Yeah, something. I'm with Ben. I know a couple of them. So here's the difference. We are going to be talking about genus and species, but in logic, there's only genus and species. There isn't kingdom and phylum and class and all that stuff. So just genus and species. So that's the definition of a genus. So here's what I mean when I say that we all define by genus and species. So for example, if I asked you to define a dime, you might say a coin worth 10 cents. What is the genus of dime? What's the big category that dime fits in? Ben?
Like
coin. Okay. What about kitten? If I said kitten, a young cat, what is the genus of kitten? No. So you're thinking biology. According to this definition, what is the genus of kitten? Cat. I think I steered you wrong, Georgia, because I said it was the genus of cat. My apologies. She would have gotten it right if her teacher wasn't a bozo. So a young cat is a kitten. So we're defining these by genus and species. So you can see dime and kittens are species of coins and cats. So you all know how to do this. When I said genus and species, you probably thought, oh my gosh. But guess what? You already know how to do this. So what's a species? A species of a term, again, this is in your catechism, this will be on your quiz. A species of a term is a term that is more specific, narrow, or concrete than the original term and is included by it. So if I just say the word cat, I'm talking about old cats, young cats, big cats, small cats, tigers, lions, not bears. All right, like I'm talking about all cats. But if I say kitten, I'm now narrowing it down. Okay, whatever species I'm talking about a young cat. So that is a species. Dime, kitten. Any questions so far? Current.
This lesson 2 will be on our catechism quiz too.
Yes. All right, so terms that we talked about yesterday or talked about last week can be placed in a genus and species hierarchy. And we're going to see how to do that today. So the reason we do this, the reason we place terms in a genus and species hierarchy is to show the relationship between them. So everybody open up your textbook to page 15. So everyone should have their textbook open, page 15. So there in front of you, on page 15, is a genus and species hierarchy. So you can see it there, hopefully on page 15. We see food, meats, dairy, fruits, vegetable, grains, and then under dairy we see butter, cheese, cream, milk, under grains, wheat, barley, and rye. Now, food, in this particular genus and species hierarchy, food is the big genus that includes all of these species. Note that species of some food are also the genus of other species. So this is going to blow your mind here. One item on a genus and species chart can be both a genus and a species. So look at dairy. Dairy is a species of food. So when I say look at dairy, I mean in page 15 on your book, okay? Dairy is, guys, if I say look at page 15 on your book, you shouldn't be writing, you should be looking at page 15 on your book. I'm glad you're passionate about taking notes, but I want you to understand. So if I say look at page 15, stop writing for a second, look at page 15. So look, and you'll notice that dairy is a species of food. It is under the category of food, but there are things under dairy. So food has the species dairy, and now dairy is the genus of butter, cheese, cream, and milk. And we could keep going. Can somebody name some species of cheese? Vandernoot?
Brie.
Brie?
Blue cheese.
Blue cheese?
Sharp. I'm sorry.
Sharp what?
Cheddar.
Sharp cheddar. That's what you're going to say? Mozzarella, yes?
Queso.
Yeah, so we can go on and on and on, and we could keep adding categories. So, for example, under cheese, we could say cheddar. Under cheddar, we could say yellow and white. Under yellow, we could say mild, sharp, medium. We could keep going down and down and down, and so every single one of them is going to be both a genus and a species. So, for example, fruit. What are some species of fruit?
Strawberries.
Strawberries. Watermelons. Tomato. Apple. Great example. Now, under apple, what would be some species of apple? Give me the big categories first. Well, give me the big categories first. Green. And then what would the other one be?
Yellow.
Yellow. How about another one? Red, right? And then under red, we could say red delicious or a wash. We could keep going on and on and on. So genus and species. Another example, grapes, red grapes or green grapes. So the term genus and species are relative because some terms can be both a genus and a species. So think about this. What category, what genus would food go under? Like if I had the ultimate genus and species hierarchy, what category would you put food under? Jesse? Edible. Okay?
Life source.
Say again?
Life source.
A life source. Okay? Nutrition. And all those would work. Can anybody think of a term that there is no higher term, that it can't, like this particular term, can't go under anything else? Hold on, answer my question first. Can anybody think of a term that can't go under anybody else? Vandernoot?
God.
God. Yeah. What could you put God under?
Universal power.
Yeah.
Savior.
Well, the problem with that, we will get to in a moment, but universal power implies that there are other universal powers. Because if God is the only thing under universal power, then God is not a type of universal power. God is the universal power. So there is, you might rack your brain for a second, but there is no biblical category that God fits under. So this is what we talk about, the creator-creature distinction. God isn't like anything else. Everything else would go under a category, but God alone does not go under a category. Yes?
Could you do existing?
Existing, but then again, God is the source of all existence. So again, he's different. Like God exists in a different way than I do. So we have too much different for us to do that. But let's move aside from the God question for a moment. Ava, you had a question.
Yeah, so like if you're doing kind of just like you're sorting it out, so like correct me if I'm wrong, food is the genus, and then underneath food is dairy, and then underneath dairy is cheese, and then underneath cheese is what? Like, so I know, is dairy the species?
Yeah, so in this particular example, on this particular species chart, dairy, okay, we would say it like this. Dairy is a species of food, and dairy is the genus of cheese. And then we would say cheese is a species of dairy, and cheese is the genus of cheddar. Cheddar is a species of cheese, and cheddar is the genus of yellow cheddar. And so they work both ways, okay? So in this particular, on page 15, that particular hierarchy, there isn't anything above food, okay? But everything else on that chart could have, so for example, meats, right? We could have fish, or we have like water-based and land-based. And under water-based, we could have fish or crustaceans. And under land-based, we could have cow or sheep or pig and so on. So you could just keep breaking it down, and whichever one you have is both a genus of what's beneath it and a species of what's above it, okay? All right, any other questions about genus and species? All right, so look at the chart on page 16. So what are the genus? There are two. What are the two genuses or the two genera on page 16? There are two. Thomas.
Logic and formal logic.
Logic and formal logic. So notice that both logic and formal logic have items underneath it on the genus and species chart, meaning that they are genera. That's the plural form of genus. Okay, so what are the species? There are four. What are the species? Jefferson, what are the four species on that genus and species chart on 16?
Informal logic, formal logic, induction.
Correct. Informal logic, formal logic, induction, and deduction. You can tell because they're underneath another category on a genus and species chart. So the species, informal logic, and formal logic are mutually exclusive. And this is a big key for us to get for today. Mutually exclusive means they don't overlap. Say it again. Mutually exclusive means the two terms don't overlap. Formal logic and informal logic are two different things. They do not overlap. They are two separate branches of logic. They are also exhaustive. This is another big thing for us to get today. No other species exist under that particular genus. So if I ask you to list types of logic, there are two and only two. So if I asked Jefferson, tell me the types of logic, and he said informal logic and formal logic, he has exhausted all the possibilities. There aren't any other types of logic that Jefferson or anyone else could list. So mutually exclusive means your two categories don't overlap. Exhaustive means that you have listed every possible species. Now, that's almost never going to happen in real life. Like, could we sit here and list every possible type of cheese?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we could not sit here. We don't know. The people in this room do not know every possible type of cheese. Maybe we could stop. Maybe if we looked up the internet, maybe we could find, but what if someone has invented something that's not yet on the internet? So we're almost never going to fully exhaust a genus and species list, but we don't have to. Okay, we don't necessarily have to. So theoretically, every genus can be divided into species that are mutually exclusive and exhaustive. Theoretically, every genus can be divided into species that are mutually exclusive and exhaustive. In reality, species always have to be mutually exclusive. Like if you do a genus and species chart, as we'll talk about here in a second, your genus and species always have to be mutually exclusive, but they're almost never exhaustive. And that's okay. They don't have to be. Species always have to be mutually exclusive, but they aren't exhaustive, usually. Logic, being informal logic and formal logic, is a rare exception. So, like we just said, you probably could not come up with an exhaustive list of all the potential possible species of food. God knows every potential species of food, but humans don't. There's billions and billions of people eating billions and trillions of different things, and you and I don't know and can't know every single type of food in the world, but God does. So rest assured. Now, the chart on page 16 is one of many different charts that we could draw for the genus logic. If we used a different dividing principle, we could come up with a different list. So when we divided logic into formal logic and informal logic, the dividing principle was how directly related to reasoning was the term. What if it was, what is the goal of the term? So for example, let's take food. What if instead of types of food, I said divide food by its purposes? What is one purpose of food? Vandernoot? Okay, well, true, but like what does it do when you eat it? So what's the purpose of food when you eat it? Okay, it fills you up. It keeps you alive. What's another purpose of food, though? Eden? Well, that's kind of like to fill us. What else does food do? Gives you pleasure. Like you eat a good slice of pizza or a nice piece of chocolate, then you don't just get energy to stay alive. It makes you happy. Makes me really happy. So we can divide by different terms and we would get a different type of list. So look at the second chart on page 16. Logic, it's at the bottom of page 16. Logic is now no longer divided into informal and formal. It's now divided to logic as a science and logic as an art. Logic as a science and logic as an art. So last thing we'll cover before I give you your homework assignment. Several errors to avoid when constructing genus and species chart. So what's wrong with the first chart on page 17? Vandernoot?
There's well, lawyers isn't mutual.
Jefferson.
Oh, logic goes on.
Page 17. Gracie.
Women can be lawyers.
Yeah, there are women who are lawyers, okay? There are lots of women who are lawyers. So that's the problem with the chart on page 17. So here's your error. These species on page 17 are not mutually exclusive. They overlap. Okay, did we get that? The problem with the genus and species chart at the top of page 17 is that your two species are not mutually exclusive. They overlap, okay? The error that caused this mistake was using two different dividing principles for the genus people at the same time. Division by gender and division by profession. If I wanted to divide people by gender, what would the two species be? Man and woman. If I wanted to divide people by profession, how many species would there be? A lot. Okay? But do you see on that genus and species chart, they used two different categories at the same time, and therefore we get categories that overlap. All right, what's wrong with the second chart on page 17? Vandernoot?
Induction isn't a part of logic yet.
Close. You're close. Thomas?
Induction is a type of formal logic. It's a species of formal logic.
Okay, so look back at that first chart. Induction is a part of formal logic. So what we've done here, induction has moved up the chart. So it's a species of formal logic and goes underneath it, not next to it. So think of the food chart. What if we had this? Food, and then underneath it we had dairy, and then we had cheese. Okay? Cheese should go underneath dairy, not on the same level as dairy. Okay? So that is the second error we want to avoid. Jefferson?
Could you also put like a family tree, kind of like this, like where it starts from and then it branches out and it's got different family members?
Yeah, but that's not super helpful. So let's just stay here. So what's wrong with the third chart on page 17? Ben?
There are different types of ball. Like a ball in the midwinter ball is like a dance, and then baseball is like
Yeah. So here's our problem. The genus ball is ambiguous. It has more than one possible meaning. It could mean a round toy that bounces, or it could mean where Cinderella met her prince. So we want to make sure that we are absolutely clear about what we are dividing before we start dividing it, because we don't want ball, baseball, midwinter ball. Okay? What's wrong with the fourth chart on page 17? Vandernoot?
The bicycle, the species are not supposed to be part of the genus.
That's exactly right. Species are not supposed to be parts of the genus. They're supposed to be types. Do we understand the difference? So bicycle, what are some types of bicycles?
mountain bike.
Mountain bike, Jesse?
I was gonna say like a motorbike.
Okay, mountain bike. Bicycle implies like not motor powered. So let's say mountain bike, racing bike, like street bike. Okay, so these are all types. But if I say bicycle, frame, pedals, handlebars, brakes, these are parts of a bike, and that's not how genus and species charts work. So flower, the species of flower aren't petal and stems, but rose, lily, daisy. So we already talked about how we correct the bike chart. Any questions about genus and species? So here's your homework assignment. It's got 7 questions. Before you do this homework assignment, I would encourage you to read lesson 2 for yourself. Numbers 1 through 4 give you a genus and species chart, and there's something wrong with them. Explain the error. Use your notes, use your textbook, explain the error these 4 charts make. 5 and 6 give you a term and then ask you to fill out your own genus and species chart that makes sense of the term they give you. And then number 7 give you a bunch of terms and say, fill out this whole genus and species chart. Okay? If you'll read the chapter first or read the lesson first, this is not a particularly difficult assignment. It is due tomorrow. And look, guys, look back here for the bell rings. Look back here. Look what we have. We have a tray. I spent my own birthday money because I love you. And it says Logic 3. That's you guys. So put your homework in here when you're done with it. This is where homework goes from now on, okay?
We have to beg this man. Thank you. I like this.
Well, that's a good.
Look, this one.
Oh, this is not a lot.
Let's face the greater danger.
Everyone put your name on it now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know, that's why.
Thanks, Ben.